Joining me now on the Knicks Film School Podcast, I think you last heard them, unless I'm mistaken, I think the last time you heard them was in the midst of the pandemic, which we are still in, but we were really in the meat of it when we were doing the post-game reviews of the Last Dance Michael Jordan documentary every Sunday, which inevitably just like divulged or it deteriorated into the three of us yelling obscenities at one another. So naturally, I had to bring them back for the first appearance in a bit. Who should I introduce first? I'll introduce Yash first. Hello, Yash. How are you?
I'm getting over COVID, so that's excellent.
I mean, you look okay.
Yeah,
for you. Yash has a real job that it's actually important, and like he helps people for a living, and we don't need to talk about that. Bernard is a reviewer for Loud and Clear Reviews. He's been in the thick of what festival this week?
Sundance starts in a week. So
that's right.
That'll take up my time.
That's right. You sent me your Sundance schedule.
There's a lot of movies.
You also apparently have a job and a family.
I'm tired.
We're all tired because I'm old. You're almost as old, and Yash, you're getting there. So
you just have like 80% lung capacity now, Yash. It's the same thing as being old.
That's true. Yeah. Right now I'm tired because, I'm on like day 8 of this shit, but, getting there.
You're getting there. So we're as Bernard has a family and Yash has to go back and lay down in bed. We're gonna get right to it today. So we have a fun little thing that I planned out, which is today a new president took office. We don't talk politics on this show, but we will commemorate the event with a little exercise in trying to figure out where the Knicks will be the next time we have one of these things. These things come around every 4 years, and barring any changes to the way we run this country, the next one will be 4 years from now. So we're going to play a little game and try to figure out what lies ahead 4 years from now using our lawyerly abilities, even though you guys are the ones that still practice law and I just don't. But first, we're going to play a game of what's the game where the couples figured out how well they knew each other?
The newlywed game?
Newlywed game.
There you go, yeah.
Yes, the newlywed game. Except we're not newlyweds. These are my oldest friends that appear on this podcast. But I'm going to try to figure out how well I know them. So here's what I have devised. You are going to tell me, I'm going to give you 5 choices, okay? And you're going to tell me, and I was thinking about this because I was preparing for this, and I'm like, oh, man, what are we going to talk about 4 years from now? But then I'm thinking right now, things are already exciting. And then I'm thinking, wow, there's actually a lot to be excited about with the Knicks right now, right this second, that it's for the first time in a while, it seems like it may actually be hard to figure out what is the most excited thing or the thing to be most excited about. So you ready for your 5 choices?
I am.
Okay, here are your 5 choices. Choice 1. Emmanuel Quickley. Choice 2, RJ Barrett. Choice 3, Tom Thibodeau. Choice 4, Leon Rose / the general state of the franchise. And finally, choice 5, Julius Randle. So to prove how well I think I know my own friends, I have written down my predicted answers for both of you. I want you to each give me your top 2. Okay? You all right? Do you need a second to think, or you're good with your answers?
I'm good.
You're good? Okay.
I'm good too.
Okay. Bernard, why don't you tee us off? What is the thing you are most excited about?
Well, you omitted Ignas Brazdeikis still being a New York Knick, but with that aside, I'm going to go with the general front office competence, followed by Tom Thibodeau.
Yes,
unpredictable. I did think strongly of Quickley's asteroid-sized balls before I answered.
I'm saving that text to put in a future newsletter. Okay, so I'm gonna hold up the piece of paper that I wrote my predicted answers down on in front of the camera soon. But Yash, let me get your top 2 answers.
So This is it's kind of a tough one. I completely understand. If it weren't for the two that I'm going with, it would have been Bernard's two. My two are Tom Thibodeau, and just I include him in the sort of general competence of the coaching staff. And my second one is RJ Barrett, because I think RJ Barrett has made enormous strides this season because of the competence of Tom Thibodeau and the coaching staff. And I'm very excited about both of those things.
So I think I get 2.5, because here's what I wrote down. I nailed, I ignore whatever my wife wrote down in the other part of this paper. I nailed Bernard's in order. Yash, I had RJ number 1, and I actually had Julius Randle number 2 for you, Yash. So I guess given our history, it's no surprise that I guess I know Bernard in a little bit more intimate way. There's no shame in that.
Never forget San Antonio.
Never forget it.
That's right.
What happens in Texas stays in Texas. As people are like, what are these people talking about? Don't worry. Yash, I didn't think you'd say Tibbs. I'll be honest with you.
Interesting.
I mean, I know you like Tibbs, but I didn't think you were that high on him.
Yeah, well, I'm that high on him because of the success that RJ's had. I have long been RJ's biggest defender in our text thread. I think you're way too hard on him.
What we are is called fair. We're just fair given the evidence.
Oh, God. I mean, he's 20 years old and he's just barely played one full season, and he's had the worst possible situation around him. And you're ready to write him off as like, oh, well, we need to talk about, he needs to accept that he's just not going to be that good. It's like, well, no, he doesn't need to accept anything. Okay. Like we're so far away from knowing what he's going to be, has always been what I've said. And the improvement he's made this year, I think, has been beyond what we could have expected just from how he was as a rookie, particularly on the defensive end. And so if he makes another kind of similar leap next season, I think one of the things we'll be talking about 4 years from now is RJ Barrett All-Star. So, and that's why I think Tibbs is why I have to put Tibbs as one of the first two, because he's had such a huge impact on player development and coaching.
100%. I just do want it noted for the record that there is a gray area between, what was the term you just used? That he needs to accept that he stinks or something along those lines.
He's just not going to be that good. Like, he needs to accept.
Oh yeah. There's a gray area between he's not going to be that good and what you said via text, I believe it was yesterday, which is that he'll be Jimmy Butler. Not like he'll be a lesser. You were like, he's going to be Jimmy Butler, who was just the best player or the second best player in a finals. You don't see that there's like a gap between those two?
You had his reasonable outcome. Like what you would expect if everything just went fucking normal, not upscale, not optimism, as a fucking Hall of Famer.
No, that is not true.
You had him as an 8 to 10 time All-Star as his normal outcome, and everyone who makes 10 fucking All-Star games is a Hall of Famer.
I said 3 to 5. You're totally exaggerating.
You are toning it down now.
No, I'm not toning it. That is what I said. I said 3 to 5 All-Star games.
Which, in fairness,
is not a Hall of Famer. There are plenty of guys with 6 appeareries who are not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and there's also other guys with what is it? Reggie Miller, I think, has 4. Whatever. You're really high on RJ Barrett, which is fine. I love that you're really high on RJ Barrett. I'm high on him too, within reason. But whatever. Listen. We could be here all day talking about this. So this is actually a good entree point into our conversation, because the way I wanted to start this out is, if you had to bet your life, or Bernard, you're married, so I'll make you bet Lily's life, because I know you value that far more than your own.
Drink.
Who is the person, and it doesn't have to be a player, it could be a front office person, it could be a coach, it could be whatever, that you would bet your life on being here in 4 years? Bernard, you've been a little bit more quiet. Why don't we start with you?
Ooh. I will bet my life that in 4 years, the single current New York Knicks person who will still be on the team is Obi Toppin.
That's pretty. That's this. I mean, it's the smart money, right?
It's the laziest option because of how contracts work and the fact that he will almost certainly still be on the team this date 4 years from now. No matter what upheaval, I think he's a good bet to still be here.
I think that's, I actually think that's actually kind of an interesting answer, because it is an interesting answer for sure because of Randle. I think, doesn't Randle make that a little bit more tenuous? Because if you're looking at, I think we all agree that at some point there's going to be a trade, a trade of a goodly nature, and that 4 years from now we're not going to be looking at the same group of players. And then it's a question of like, all right, well, what young player or players goes out in the trade? And like, I don't know. Is there a world where Julius? Well, let's pivot for a second. We're already going off the beaten path. Is there a world where both Julius Randle and Obi Toppin are on this team still in? Forget about 4 years. In like 2.5, 3 years.
Perversely, yes, I do. I do think there's a world where that happens. I think that Randle has already put himself in a place where we have to assume the option is going to be picked up.
Oh, that's done.
It's a given at this point. And honestly, he's the sort of player that, assuming this keeps up any longer, we really have to be thinking in terms of keeping around as a long-term asset. But I would not be surprised if Toppin and Randle, under Thibodeau's guidance, figure out a way to make it work together. The Julius Randle from last year, I never would have said this about, but this new guy that we've seen this season, I can imagine a way that could work.
I could too. Yash, you seem to agree with that as well.
Yeah, I think that there's a world where Randle and Toppin are starting at the 4 and 5, and Mitch ends up being the odd man out if they can't work out his contract situation. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's very easily could be possible that one of them is the small ball 5 and the other one's at the 4, and they have the skill set to make it work.
Yeah, I think I think that's the only way that it's going to work, because if Toppin is, here's the thing, Bernard, if Toppin's still here in 4 years, I think that means he's good, right?
At least decent. Yes.
Yeah. So if he's decent for him, it means he's going to be an offensive monster, because we know he's going to have his issues on the defensive end, which means that dude's going to start, which means, as you just said, Yash, it's going to be an undersized 4-5, but they would then, I can't imagine Mitch being around for that. I think they would do some kind of like, let's sign the best cheap 5 on the market that we can to fill in the gap for this year, which is fine if that's the way they want to go, because they're going to need some size. Yash, who's your guy who you think is 100% going to be here in 4 years?
So I think, sticking with the theme of the night so far, I think it's going to be RJ. I think he's just going to be the guy who becomes indispensable to the fan base. And, they're going to love watching him grow and develop and become better. And I think him and Tibbs are just going to have a great relationship, and it's going to be very difficult to send him out in a trade for a star. I think that he's going to be the guy that he's going to be a building block of this franchise for a long time.
So, of course, I have to push back. You just got done singing his praises. Do you think it's going to be very difficult to send him out for a trade and a star because he's going to be so good that the organization couldn't fathom trading him, or because he's going to be looked at as an odd fit around the league?
No, I think it's going to be that he will both be good enough and also beloved by the fans enough that they're not going to want to see him traded.
It's funny you say that, because I was on Twitter like a week and a half ago when that dude was in the midst of an 0 for
60.
Whatever it was, where people, I don't tend to talk about the DMs that I get, just because of the amount of, single women, obviously that proposition.
Okay.
I don't like to put that in Dolores's face. It's just not nice. But I was
usually prefer the married ones.
But I was terrible. But I was getting a lot of DMs from because my DMs are open. I was getting a lot from people being like, I'm starting to be concerned about RJ. Please tell me not to be worried about RJ. I'm really this is bad, right? This is bad, right, John? This is bad. And I'm just like, he's a second. Here's the thing. I may not get as high on RJ as you, Yash. I also don't get that low. Like, I wasn't worried. I was just like, okay, let's figure it out. But Yeah, that's why the only reason I think that's interesting. I don't think you're wrong, by the way. I think RJ would be my pick too, for the guy that I would bet the most, just because of the thing with Randle that I like. If there is a superstar trade to come, you figure RJ staying, you figure Randle staying because I think he has probably more value to the franchise. I think Obi's the guy that people are going to ask for, assuming he looks the part when he comes back and plays for a while. Or the other guy we haven't talked about yet, Emmanuel Quickley. Bernard, you're raising a fist.
I love him. I love everything about him. Every minute he graces the court makes my heart go a flutter.
Don't let Iggy hear you say that.
Shh, Iggy's probably not listening to this podcast right now. And
Don't say
Iggy,
that.
I'm sorry to cheat on you for a moment here, but man, if they gave you a chance, I'm sure you could do the same things to my heart that Quickley has done. But holy shit, that guy rocks.
Yeah, I almost wonder if given Truth Serum, whether they would be like the front office would like values Quickley more than Obi at that point. Maybe that's a bit much too soon.
You know what I think it is? Quickley has already, Yash, you talked about the fan base. Quickley has already become the Knicks fan handshake. If you talk to somebody about basketball, the first thing two Knicks fans do is say, holy shit, Quickley. Nobody, not a single Knicks fan is like, oh my God, RJ Barrett. Quickley is the guy that shows you love this team.
Yeah. And unlike Frank, because Frank was that guy for the last 3 years.
He was. That's true.
When we would text about Frank, it would be like, man, did you see that third quarter stretch where he was digging?
He was not a bad player for like 4 minutes.
Well, he got his hands in he had that moment where he came around that screen and it was really, and he put his both feet in the paint and he shot a ball from the paint. No, I mean, like, look, I'm being a little bit facetious, but this is the type of shit that we were excited about. I certainly was. I could admit that. Now it's like,
oh, wait a minute. Neither of us.
Oh, I was, but. And I would still be excited to see him come back. My stance on him has changed because I just think the organization has mentally moved on. And I think just as importantly, I think he's mentally moved on, but we don't have to dwell on that. Quickly, he's leading all rookies that have played more than 100 minutes in points per 36 minutes. He's averaging 5 assists per 36 minutes. And he just absolutely looks the part of a guy who's going to be at worst a first guard off the bench on a really good team that could come in and screw shit up. So, I think RJ will be here in 4 years. I think Quickley will be here in 4 years. The bigger question for me is Randle, because you just mentioned his option, Bernard. I feel like it's maybe too early to talk about this, but like, maybe it isn't. Is like Randle an extension candidate now?
It's possible. Before we do talk more about Randle, though, I do have one scenario where, to temper the Quickley hype.
Why would you do that?
Here's where he may not be here in 4 years.
Why?
If the Knicks get really lucky in the lottery and they get the first or second pick, and they end up with Cade or Jalen Suggs, he's not going to Quickley at that point is no better than the backup point guard at that point.
Hold on. He's a guy who could play either the one or the two. He can defend. It seems like he could defend ones and twos, right? He doesn't need the ball in his hands, but he can have the ball. Like, that's a really versatile guy. That's a perfect first guard off the bench.
And he can fucking shoot.
Right.
Oh, there's that too.
But to complete my thought, or he could become good enough that another team looks at him as a starting point guard and it becomes too expensive to keep Suggs and Cade, and then have a guy like Quickley as a backup point guard or even first guard off the bench if he develops into what is clearly a starting point guard, but just not franchise level lead guard like Cade or Suggs will be. So,
I get what you're saying. I don't see,
and that wouldn't be a bad scenario necessarily for the Knicks, because it means you could get value for trading a guy like that. But I don't. An ideal scenario in terms of like you've got a great point guard at that point who's better than him, and he's also good enough that teams value him enough that they want him in a trade. and he's not worth it as much for you at that point. So I could see that scenario happening. So that's why I just bring up a very plausible scenario as to why he wouldn't be here 4 years from now. And it could be because he just becomes too good to keep, but not as good as, if they get lucky in the lottery and they get one of these two franchise point guards.
The only reason I disagree with that is, and by the way, breaking news, Detroit Pistons rookie Killian Hayes will rest and rehab his right hip injury and be reevaluated in 8 weeks. Man, that's tough.
That's what I would have expected if we drafted him.
Oh, it's just not nice.
Yeah.
Here's my pushback on that. And I'm not saying that these guys are necessarily similar players, but DeAnthony Melton, who plays for he started out in Phoenix. He's played the last 2 years for the Grizzlies. Not eye-popping numbers. He averaged 20 minutes a game last year, 7.6 points. Not a great 3-point shooter, but he's looked at as a solid player on both ends. A guy who can start for you if you need in a pinch, but so not what we're projecting Quickley to be, but also if you ask the Knicks, even 3 weeks ago, hey, if Emmanuel Quickley turns into DeAnthony Melton, are you going to be cool with that? I bet you a few people within the Knicks be yeah, that's okay, semi-reasonable. He signed for 4 years and I think it was $27 million this offseason. A little bit more than that. 4 years and looks like 30, in a little bit above 30. So I don't know. I don't see Quickley as someone who any team is going to be ooh, that is a starting point guard for a really good team. I think he's a guy who can start in a pinch, but I think ideally suited, he's a guy who's coming off the bench, or he's a 2 guard alongside along Cade Cunningham, right? Wouldn't that be nice? That's I don't know.
I mean, that's the other thing. We are so far. If it's too early to say what RJ is going to be, it's way too early to say that Quickley cannot be a starting point guard on a good team.
That's fair. No, that's not unfair. I'll say that it's not unfair. Okay, so that is a scenario.
I would just note right here for the record that the New York Knicks will not have a lottery pick if the season ended today. And I think that's an important consideration.
Actually, that's a lie. They would. It just wouldn't belong to them. It would be Dallas's pick.
That's fair, actually. I don't think it's going to stay that way, but that's fair.
The Mavs pick goes into the top 3, and there you go. Get Jalen Suggs.
Oh, man. I'm sure. Gosh. I want Suggs so bad. I don't even care about it. If we get Cade, great. But Suggs is the guy that I want.
Yeah, Suggs is going to be pretty great, and he's more of a traditional point guard. I mean, Cade is unique with his size and his ability to defend and all that.
Cade solves so many of their problems. Oh my God,
Cade is awesome.
Yeah, he's really.
How fun would that be?
There's actually a chance that Mobley ends up going first, so you may not need to get the first pick. You may be able to just get the second, because and in fairness, Mobley would be deserving of that. That dude is he's just not a real person. Okay, Randle. So I believe Randle is extension eligible this summer. I hope I'm not misstating that, but I believe he is. Because you're sure you're able to extend these guys on their second contract. I don't know that they will. I think they'll probably just keep their options open, but if he does this for another 2 years, that dude's going to want to get paid. He got $20 million a year now. He's going to want at least 30. Do we like Julius Randle? 5-year extension, $150 million. Are we liking the sound of that?
If he plays like he's still playing now, right? I think you end up having to have the conversation a couple years from now. It also depends on what pieces you put around him. Yes. You get a point guard who can shoot, say a Jalen Suggs, or it doesn't have to be him. It's starting point guard who can actually shoot. And other wing players who can shoot and really take advantage even more of his newfound playmaking abilities. And, Randle continues to be what he is, which is just a dominant one-on-one player and good rebounder. And he continues to improve his awareness on defense. Yeah, 2 years from now, if he not only maintains everything he's been doing, but becomes even a better version and more valuable to the team, then I think you do end up having to start having that conversation of, well, who do you keep at that point? I mean, how do you not keep the guy? Could end up being the conversation a couple years from now.
What I'd like to see, and Bernard, I know you're very high on Randle too, so I'm curious what you think about this. I think there's almost, choose my words carefully. I think there's almost a more of a reason to seek out a trade for a legitimate wing initiator now. I'll say the name, Victor Oladipo. I think there's almost more of an excuse to try to go get a guy like Oladipo now to see what he looks like alongside, or rather to see what Randle looks like alongside of a guy who's going to have the ball in his hands a lot on offense. Because right now, Randle's value in large part derives from the fact that he has the ball every damn possession and the offense is running through him. Is he still going to maintain that value if there's someone else who has that? I don't, I wonder, I don't know whether that will factor into their thinking, but I almost wonder if it should.
If you told me, I think you raise a fair point. I don't think they should necessarily burn kids this year to get someone like Oladipo in the door at this trade deadline, because it's just. Look,
I'm not saying trade any of the guys we're talking about. I don't even think I trade Knox for Oladipo. I'm talking about a crap.
But I don't think you're getting him. So
maybe not. Tillman Fertitta. Oh my God, Fertitta. I put the word cheap into his name. Tillman Fertitta doesn't like to spend money.
This is true.
Just throwing it out there. We talked about this, me and Jeremy. But anyway, continue.
Look, if you told me that we had a 26-year-old player who produces like Julius Randle has produced for 15 games this year, yeah. I would say, holy shit, yes, cut the check. We have a guy you build around in the house right now. We're all understandably suffering from the trauma of having watched Julius Randle last year and having seen other bits and pieces of Julius Randle's career. And the real question, look, Randle is sort of unique because he's the rare player where you have to say, you know what? I need to see more. I need to see you do this for an entire season before I say this is a guy I want to build around. Frankly, at the deadline, I'm looking forward to playoff basketball this year as a wonderful 9 seed or something like that. But which seems actually vaguely reasonable as outcomes go here, based on where we are right now and the general shittiness of the East. But if someone made a good offer at this deadline for Julius Randle, they wanted to get him and have the option to keep him cheap next year, I'm certainly not going to clutch my pearls on that one. I would open it up to move him.
No one should clutch their pearls on that. I don't think that offer's coming. I need to think about it some more, but I don't think that offer's coming. So so it sounds like we all feel like RJ's going to be here. Tibbs going to be here in 4 years? We have the elephant in the room.
The only concern is the head of the snake, and what whims he may have and how Dolan may fuck all this up. But he should be here 4 years from now.
Yeah.
I think Johnny Bryant's the successor in waiting. I think that's how they got Johnny Bryant. I think maybe it wasn't explicitly said, or maybe it was explicitly said. I don't know. But that's a dude that's going to be a head coach in the league, and everybody knows it. So yeah, you don't have to worry about Mike Woodson and who else is on there, Kenny Payne's. I don't, he'll maybe get a college head job, but Johnny Bryant's the guy that he, especially since everything you read about him, he's kind of a different personality than Tibbs. So if Tibbs, if they get to winning and then Tibbs starts to grind on guys a little bit too much, I could see it. I don't know. I'm 50-50 on if Tibbs is going to be here in 4 years.
Can I speak to the grinding thing for a moment? Everyone says that, and if there was a single player you would most expect to recoil against the sort of grinding Tibbs style, it might be Julius Randle. And Julius Randle is the guy who's responded the best. Yeah. I think there's something to the notion that Tibbs has evolved in some ways, gotten a little bit softer touch, a little more of a human element to the way he interacts with people, so that he can get people playing his game without brutalizing their psyche as much as perhaps a younger version of him used to.
I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, he let Julius Randle have a glass of wine 2 nights ago. So there's that.
Right, exactly.
Look, Julius Randle going home to have a glass of wine is the most he's ever done for my heart. So
my concern,
Bernard, yes, or Yash, yes.
Still being here in 4 years would be more. I mean, the guy's not going to be able to do this forever. I mean, he's a pretty intense guy, and he's in his 60s now. And
what the fuck else is he going to do though? This guy's a coach. He'll coach little league or what? Not little, YMCA basketball if he doesn't have an NBA job.
Well, unless he has like a heart attack or something, God forbid. I mean,
whatever. They could come back from that. You take 6 months off, you come back, you're fine.
I think Tibbs is always going to want to coach. He's a coach. That's what he does. But I think there's something to what you're saying, Bernard. Okay, so Tibbs. Maybe RJ, yes, Randall, good chance. Quickly and Obi, we talked about. We haven't mentioned Mitch.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards he's not going to be here 4 years from now. I feel like.
I love yes. Mitch. He's clearly evolved. He's clearly evolved this year. He's such a better defender. He's not getting into the foul trouble. He's just better this year. But there's a feel of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is here. Some sort of unsettlement between the Knicks and Mitch, and it's hard to push that out of my mind.
I don't know. I wish I could read Mitch. I really do wish I can't read Mitchell Robinson at all. I think he's just really immature as a person, not as a player, not as like a locker room guy or anything. I just think he's like a young, what is he? 22, 23? I think, but whatever. He's like 22 going on 16. So yeah, I don't know. I just wonder, but at the same time, it's like Jared Allen, who like we're not allowed to talk about because we're Knicks fans, but is a pretty damn good player, just netted what's going to be the 28th pick in the draft. Yeah. So if they're like, ooh, wait, we may not want to hand this guy $50 million or whatever it's going to take to get Mitch to stay, what's his value around the league? Like the notion that we were all talking about, like, oh, maybe Mitchell Robinson in the 8th pick could get us up to number 2 and we could take LaMelo Ball. Like, I don't know if that was ever happening. I think that may have been a bit fanciful.
The traditional big man who doesn't show the ability to help space the floor, which Mitch has not yet.
Except on Instagram.
Right, exactly.
That counts. Or TikTok. Is he on TikTok?
TikTok? I don't have a TikTok, so it must be Instagram.
Yeah, you probably have like 7 TikToks.
I do not, except I'm too old for TikTok.
Your TikTok and your Grinder, it's fine.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a lot like the running back in the NFL. It's just become a devalued position where unless you're, Rudy Gobert level good, and even then, everybody's looking at that contract like a ridiculous contract because he's just not going to live up to it. Mitch, I don't think is going to be worth to this team what the Knicks can replace him with for a lot less money. And the guy is kind of a loose cannon when it comes to contract negotiations. He's burned through 6 agents.
So he is on. I think he's on his 6th agent. Yes.
Oh Jesus! Come on, he's been in the league for like 2.5 years, 2 years,
two and
change. Yeah, that's not and that guy. And
so wait, if you had a client that you were their 6th lawyer, are you saying you would have some qualms about representing that person?
Having been,
I've done that. It sucks.
I have had justified qualms about being in that situation. And
as a personal injury attorney, I always loved that. Oh, how many attorneys have you been to with this? You tripped on a curb? Oh, were you 6th? Oh, let's bring that in.
Right.
What do you got? A toenail, a hung nail? Okay, sure.
And you have that guy on one side, and then you have Leon Rose on the other side, Mr. like polished Godfather super agent. I just don't think that's going to be a productive negotiation where both sides are going to be able to meet in the middle.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. No, I don't think Mitch is going to be here in 4 years. I legitimately hope I'm wrong, because other than Frank, I don't think there's a player I've like genuinely enjoyed as much over the last 4 years as much as Mitch. And I do think his ceiling is fucking high. I think that dude could be awesome.
Look, I love him too, and I love his ceiling, as I've joked about before. Half jokingly said his ceiling is Embiid, which is a joke. But I think the best value the Knicks can get for Mitch is probably trading him this deadline.
Yeah, and I don't know who's in a rush to get themselves a Mitchell Robinson, who has not yet shown us like, oh, I could definitely put that guy out there for 25 minutes in a conference finals game and not think twice about it and be like, yes, for 25 minutes a night, I'm going to get exactly what I need at both ends of the court in terms of I don't know if we're there yet with Mitch.
I can think of a team that would love to have him, but they don't have anything to give us, and that's Brooklyn. Holy shit, would he fit nicely in Brooklyn?
I think they're going to be all in on DJ, and I think they're going to hope for a DJ Cares 2-3 month tour.
Look, I hope he's going to the same German doctors that treated Kobe, and he's ready to go for postseason. But
he got up a couple times. He got up a couple times in the Knicks game. I'll give DJ. Listen, DJ was in a coma for 3 years, and last year too. So yeah, like 4 years. No, we don't need to talk about DeAndre Jordan. Okay, we've gone over. My kid is, my wife is waiting for me to put this kid to bed. Are we? So here are your choices. 4 years from now, we are a perennial contender. We are a knocking on the door of contention, let's say a Utah this year. We are let's see, what's a step down from like a Utah?
Perennial 6th seed. The Hawks the last like 10 years.
Let's say like a slightly shittier version of the Pacers are right now, because I actually think the Pacers are pretty good. Choice 4 would be like the Hornets, like frisky, like, ooh, the Hornets beat the Clippers last night. Yeah, I guess I could see that. But then they lose to like the Wolves the next night. Or choice 5 is whatever, like what the Knicks have been most of the last 20 years. Yash, why don't you go first?
I'm going to say that under this administration, with competent coaching and a competent front office, that they are knocking on the door of contention.
So like
4 years from now,
okay.
4 years from now, RJ will be 24. He still won't be in his prime.
He's only going to be 24. Wow.
Yeah. But, he should just accept that he's just never going to be.
Just fuck off. Nobody likes you.
Yeah, so, keeping that in mind, I think they're going to be knocking on the door of contention, and I think they're going to be one of those teams that people will say, you know what, a couple of years from now, they're going to be contending with the right move here or there. And from that point forward, if they've been managed the way that they've been managed recently, they're on the upward trajectory to eventually being perennial contenders, maybe like 6 or 7 years from now.
Okay. I like it. Bernard?
I guess this is technically category 3. I think 4 years from now, we're looking at a team that is a predictable 4 or 5 seed that we don't think is actually going to get over the hump to win the title with the current roster they have at that point. I'm hopeful that we happen into a true blue superstar. I don't know that we're going to. And without a true blue superstar, it's hard to project titles in the future. And so long as Dolan is here, I think it's going to be difficult to attract them. And I think that the new front office and Thibodeau and the development of the kids has made it such that they're pretty unlikely to get that via the lottery over the next few years. And I think we're going to be trapped in the place of having pretty good, watchable basketball, but not a real hope of a title.
This was such a fun podcast up until that moment. Leave
it to Bernard.
Leave it to Bernard.
Leave us with existential dread.
Guys, that's way fucking better than what we've sat through for most of the last decade. Come on.
Actually, no, and if we're being honest, we glorify it, but like for, I don't want to say a lot of the 90s, but for a not insignificant portion of the 90s. Like, that's kind of what the Knicks were. Like, there were a lot of years in the 90s where nobody thought the Knicks were going to win the championship.
I dare you to say that to Charles Oakley's face.
Man, you know,
they were literally a 4 and 5 seed a couple times. So I would say
maybe
that.
a couple of times, but like there were a lot of, high 50s, low 60 win teams in the 90s. And they haven't had a year like that in a while.
94, 95, and 95, 96, off the top of my head, I know for a fact they were in that 4-5. I don't care what their seeding was. Like, they were not a threat to win a blessed thing in either of those years. 96, 97 was the really good team that got screwed by the suspensions. 97, 98, I would say they were in between a legit contender and like pseudo contender. 98, 99, obviously they went to the finals as an A seed. And then the next year, I would say they were fairly legit too, because they lost in the conference finals. And then the very beginning of the decade, there was probably...
They were 4 seed, and they beat like the Raptors, and then they lost in the second round.
No, I'm talking about the beginning of the night. Yeah, no, the 2000. Yeah, they lost the Raptors as a 4 seed. But I'm talking about the beginning of the 90s. They started out where there was a year there too. So yeah, I stand by that.
The early 90s, they won 60 games. The year that the Charles Smith series.
That was 92, 93. Before that, they still had the upward climb. Okay, but here I think Bernard's point is well taken, which is that like you say that to some Knicks fans and they'll be like, "Oh, what a waste of all the last several years." No, that would not be a waste. That would be a delightful outcome, if not the one we would maybe ideally hope for.
And the reason I say 6 to 7 years maybe that they become contenders is because the thing I've mentioned many times in our text thread, RJ will recruit his buddy Zion to be that guy for us when his rookie contract is finally up. We get RJ and Zion here together, and they lead the Knicks back to the promised land.
That dude had a fucking pass the other night. I forget what game. I was watching on a league pass where he drove baseline and or was that like the Dr. J? He has like so many moves now, like on a nightly basis that I'm literally losing track. He's really good.
And that guy wants to come here so badly.
How the fuck? He wants
nobody fucking wants to come here. Fred VanVleet wouldn't fucking sit down with the front office. No one wants to fucking come here right now.
He wanted to be drafted by the Knicks so badly, and then he was talking about.
And Charlize wants to suck your cock. Come on.
I mean, he was.
The rails were here a second ago. I saw the rails. They were right next to the rails, and now I can't see them.
You don't remember the rumors with Zion saying like, "Oh, maybe what if I refuse to play for the Pelicans?" And
didn't he want to go to the Hawks?
Ana de Armas left Ben Affleck for me also. Like, come on. We could all fantasize about beautiful things. Doesn't mean
I don't think this is a fantasy. I mean, look, RJ Barrett is his best friend, and at that point, if the Knicks are knocking on the door of contention and Zion's a free agent, like, why wouldn't the Knicks be able to sign him at that point?
I think. Listen, I think there is still an argument out there that certain players will want to come to not only New York but to the Knicks. But I still think we should bark up like the Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker tree before the Zion. I don't think Zion has any great desire to. I mean, I don't know. Maybe him and RJ are like fantastic friends, and whatever.
I think the possibility will be there if RJ is still around and the team's knocking on the door. That Zion,
I hope for your sake, because then maybe Bernard's wish will come true, and Ana de Armas will also, which I'm sure Lily wouldn't mind. I'm assuming Ana de Armas is on your pass list.
Sharing is caring, John.
She's on both of their pass lists.
I wish.
Okay. Now we're not even in the same county as the Rails anymore. Okay. On that note, this was a lot of fun. Unsurprisingly, because we do this essentially every day on text message. Yash, I would ask you to tell the folks at home where they could find you, but what do you want to promote your Twitter page, I guess?
Yeah, sure. If you want to follow me for my takes about the Knicks, sports world, politics, Yash Manjanath. It's at Yash Manjanath on Twitter.
I guarantee you the listeners need you to spell that shit.
Yeah. YASHMANJUNATH. Or you could just check out me trolling Macri, which I like to do on a almost daily basis.
On a regular basis. Go follow Yash. He's a good follow. Bernard, you actually have some real content that you can promote, which I would invite you to do right now.
Sure. I'm Bwozar, BWOZAR on Twitter, Letterboxd, wherever these things are. And you can read my stuff at loudandclearreviews.com for movie reviews and praises of Ben Affleck in the way back.
And Bernard's reviews are actually for the people watching, like they're quite good. They're not like the usual boring, like, oh, this is a review by somebody who thinks their opinion matters. Like, no, Bernard's opinions are actually they're not only well thought out, but they're also creative and engaging to read. Like, I'd highly recommend checking out his review of WandaVision in particular.
Oh, that was spectacular. Yeah.
Thank you, buddy. I take back like 80% of the mean shit I said on this podcast. That was touching.
You don't take back anything. It's here. It's on the record. Go follow Bernard. Go follow Yash. Follow Bernard for his reviews. Yash, whatever. Your Twitter account is what it is. But Bernard's reviews are very good. And definitely go check those out. And he is also a frequent guest on Final Score, hosted by the producer of this podcast, Andrew Claudio. So if you want to hear him on other podcasts, you should check that out as well. On that note, we have gone way over, but it was all in good fun. Thank you guys for coming on, and thank you, of course, out there for listening to another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. We will be back with you on Monday when me and Jeremy have our usual show to start the week.